I don't like the sun matchup. Welcome to this week's Bauer Battle Breakdown, where self-reflection is how we learn and grow. If you haven't figured out by now, this is a Sun team that I am facing, and they pretty much always lead with Charizard. Now you'll notice some Intimidates go off, and I'm faced with a very important dilemma on this very first turn. I'm worried that Incineroar will fake out, nullifying the redirection that I have on Amoonguss. However, I'm also making note of the fact that if they do not switch in Groudon, they cannot KO Porygon. So I make the choice to actually Spore with Amoonguss instead of doing Rage Powder. And this is something that I'm going to touch on later in the video, but I decided to effectively make it a pick your poison sort of scenario. In order for them to swap Groudon in and KO my Porygon and deny Trick Room, they have to take this Spore onto Charizard. I'm immediately down one of my most important Pokemon, but I'm going to be able to set myself up for success. Now that I've gotten Calyrex in and I've gotten Spore off on the Charizard, I still need to get Trick Room up because I didn't do that the first turn. I'm actually going to Spore the Groudon slot because I believe it will go for Precipice Blades, making the redirection irrelevant. However, the Groudon goes for Heavy Slam. I didn't see this coming, and thankfully it did not do as much damage as I thought it would. But now I'm in an even better position. Both of the opposing Pokemon are asleep, and now you're going to see Trick Room is about to come up. You'll see Solar Power damage, Amoonguss and Calyrex take Wildfire damage, and then we're going to the next turn. I decide to use Rage Powder in case Charizard wakes up, and you're going to see Max Quake into the Groudon slot because I correctly predicted that they would swap for Incineroar. As someone who struggled against Calyrex a lot, you gotta Intimidate cycle it. You'll see my White Herb go to correct that stat drop, and the Max Quake into Incineroar is going to do a excellent chunk of damage, much more than if I decided to Hailstorm into that slot. The Charizard was asleep, as you saw. The Max Quake is going to go into Incineroar, narrowly missing the KO, but giving me a very important special defense boost in case the Charizard wakes up. More solar power damage, more wildfire, and most notably, Charizard's Gmax ends. From here, I'm trying not to make too many critical reads. I just need to wrestle back the disadvantage that I got on turn one. Of course, I'm in a great position now, not to say that I'm in a disadvantageous position, but the goal here is to just keep doing what I'm doing. Protect the Calyrex just in case, launch off Hailstorms, pick off Pokemon, start reducing my opponent's numbers. Calyrex gets a Chilling Knee boost, more Hail, more Wildfire. It's at this point in the game that I finally see my opponent's fourth Pokemon, and it is Zacian. Thankfully, I still have my Amoonguss in play, and I still have Trick Room up. So the Pokemon that would otherwise be very threatening to me is not going to do much at this time. At this juncture, I'm just focusing on covering my bases and making solid plays. I don't need any more ridiculous reads. Even if they swap in for the Incineroar here, they will get the Intimidate, but I'm simply going to trade it with the Hailstorm KO. I figured that Zacian would protect here. However, the risk of not doing Spore into that slot was too great. Again, just trying to cover my bases, no point in being greedy, just need to keep the Zacian pinned down. And also, most notably, once Groudon comes back and Dynamax ends, I still have a turn of Trick Room and Zacian just protected, so I can get him. At this juncture, the play is very obvious. I'm checking that I have one Trick Room turn and that I'm still +1 with Calyrex. The Glacial Lance is effectively a free KO onto the Groudon no matter what, and I'm going to Spore the Zacian. You'll see here that Zacian does get the second Protect consecutively. The Groudon is still super free in this case, and I'm still at a very advantageous position, but it does create some interesting questions for the following turn, which I'm going to get to in the summary analysis portion after the game concludes. You'll see I think about this for a moment and decide that I will Rage Powder and High Horsepower into the Zacian. Other than the fact that High Horsepower is 95% accurate, this is a pretty done deal sort of play. Behemoth Blade goes in, and of course the Tiny Mushroom cannot withstand that with only 45-ish HP left. Thankfully, High Horsepower does connect. It is more than enough to wrap up Zacian and the game. Alright, before we get to the analysis, I do have one quick disclaimer to make. This game that you just saw was part of a 3-game series against Spooky, and in all fairness to him, he won the set 2-1. Games 1 and 3, he really got me. So this isn't just like, ooh, I did it and I'm awesome. Let's talk about the game. There are 2 things that I want to cover. First being the idea of 4-move syndrome. If you've been in the competitive Pokemon space for any amount of time, you're aware of what's called 4-move syndrome, where a Pokemon has too many good choices in order to narrow down their moves to just 4 that you want. Incineroar and Grimmsnarl are both really good examples of Pokemon that suffer from 4-move syndrome. Something that I think is really, really important when facing these Pokemon is the following idea. If this Pokemon is doing X, it means that they cannot also be doing Y. So what are you going to do about that? In the case of the game I had just now, Charizard cannot KO Porygon at the same time that Incineroar fakes out Amoonguss. Both of those things cannot happen. Therefore, I can Spore Charizard with Amoonguss, and that is the crux behind that turn 1 play that I made. The second thing that I want to talk about is my mantra, Palkia. The second I stands for improve upon every win. Even though this is a pretty convincing victory, I still wanted to mention something about the last turn in which I decided to Rage Powder with Amoonguss and then High Horsepower. It's worth noting that I had a absolutely fresh Palkia that Spooky had not seen yet. There is actually a safer move that I can do. If I choose to Spore Zacian with the Amoonguss and then either High Horsepower or set Trick Room with Calyrex, if Zacian goes for Amoonguss, I'm in the same spot and I'm still very likely to win. If they go for the Calyrex directly, the Zacian falls asleep, and then Palkia gets to come into play for a guaranteed 2-hit KO with Earth Power. It might seem very nitpicky to you to point this out, but consider how many professional high-level Pokemon games, or even regular ladder games that we all have, that have been decided by such a thin margin. It's these little choices and considerations that can make us all better if we build up enough of them over time. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Bauer Battle Breakdown. I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you're wondering what all this stuff is here, July is storytelling month. On my Twitch streams every Thursday evening, I'll be telling some fun anecdotes in between my ladder games. I'll put the information for my stream down below, and per usual, I'll put up another one of my videos if you'd like to see some more content right now. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week.